Good morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and here is your detailed forecast update for December 27th, 2024. We have a lot to get through today, including severe thunderstorms expected across the southeast of Queensland and the northeast of New South Wales. A developing rainfall system as well is expected to bring hundreds of millimetres of rainfall to the Queensland coastline. We'll touch on that later on in the forecast update. A weak tropical low situated offshore from Western Australia, and we'll talk about the tropical cyclone outlook just in general as well, and a general weather outlook for the remainder of Australia. All of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing, but let's get stuck straight into things today with the severe thunderstorm forecast. We'll start things off with a couple of severe thunderstorms. As you can see, they've been dancing across New South Wales, swept across by the cold front that's moving through there, bringing a very welcome cool change, I expect, to lots of interior locations of New South Wales. Gee, it was bloody hot up into the northwestern corner of New South Wales yesterday. 46 degrees, the maximum at Wilcannia, I believe, along the border. It was very, very warm indeed, and those temperatures, thankfully, are going to be substantially cooler throughout the course of today. But let's chuck it over to the rainfall and thunderstorm forecast. You can see a few thunderstorms expected to continue over the next couple of hours around the Tamworth area. They will pick up again in intensity later on this afternoon and evening, and we'll likely see some thunderstorms again around the Tamworth and Armidale area, firing up at about 3 or 4 p.m. tonight, and then into the later evening hours. We'll likely see another round of thunderstorms move through. These ones could be a little bit more severe as this cold front kind of sweeps them in, gives them the adequate fuel that's going to be required for a few severe thunderstorms here and there outside of Muswell Brook. On the north side of the Barrington Tops up to about Tamworth, we could be seeing a couple of gnarlier thunderstorms there. Again, nothing too crazy is expected, and if you flick it over to the convective forecast models, you can see that they haven't really picked up on significant thunderstorms either into the early hours of tomorrow morning, which means that the chance of substantial severe thunderstorms doesn't look overly high at this time. There could be a couple of storms though that do go severe warn for damaging winds, and also the isolated one that goes with severe warn for heavy rainfall, but I don't think we've got a severe thunderstorm outbreak on our hands this afternoon across New South Wales. Conditions are going to be there for the odd severe thunderstorm here and there. There's plenty of instability in the atmosphere, but there certainly isn't anything in terms of really concerning stuff on the forecast, not at least for New South Wales. But let's head it up into the southeast of Queensland, because that's where the meaty stuff is expected to begin from tomorrow afternoon. A couple of thunderstorms expected today, but again, nothing crazy. They'll be remaining inland out towards Injune, Roma and Chinchilla, and then those storms firing up tomorrow afternoon around the southeastern corner. Nothing too crazy expected. It's just going to be a couple of pulse thunderstorms here and there in the afternoon and evening. Could be a strong one or two down around the Lismore or Grafton area on the northeastern side of New South Wales. The really strong thunderstorms will be further inland, extending from a line between Injune out towards Hughenden and then further towards the east of all locations, kind of inland from those areas. You can see some good thunderstorms expected out towards Charters Towers and Hughenden from these thunderstorms that will blow up in the afternoon and evening. The convective forecast model is really fond of some of these systems, actually. You can see on the North Queensland convective forecast model, plenty of rainfall is expected to materialise from these thunderstorms. Some really heavy falls can be expected from these thunderstorms, and I know that the convective forecast models can produce some boogies in terms of the rainfall numbers. I mean, 100 millimetres for 3 hourly rainfall totals here up in North Queensland. That is a little bit of an interesting, very hot take, I might add, on the rainfall forecast, but it does give you an idea that some really heavy rainfall is expected. And typically when I see the blotches, not so much the circles, but the blotches of red and purple, I do suggest that severe thunderstorms are going to be moving through those areas. So down here, nothing really expected around Glendon and Moranbah, and then inland from Mackay, but up here around Ravenshoe and then into the North Queensland side of things. And then if we take a look at the convective forecast models of the southeast of Queensland, down here around the Warwick and Toowoomba area, or at least much further inland from Warwick and Toowoomba, some good thunderstorms can be expected there, just based off what the convective models are looking like. Convective available potential energy looking pretty healthy for these thunderstorms as well. I mean, their values aren't going to be sky high, but they're still going to be pretty good, especially around Injune. Instability values approaching 2,000 joules per kilogram of available oxygen. That's a lot of convective available potential energy, definitely on the higher side of normal. And then further up, I mean, it becomes a little bit more meaningless. Cape values as you get up to about Charters Towers, but some really high values are expected there. Down into the southeastern corner of Queensland, there's going to be huge levels of instability, but there's not going to be enough on the thermodynamic side to really feed these thunderstorms, and as such, an outbreak tomorrow night isn't really expected across the southeast of Queensland. They could see some very late night heavy falls around the northern extremities of the Brisbane metro area and into the Sunshine Coast, but I wouldn't expect anything crazy there. The thunderstorms will get progressively more severe as the days churn on. You can see Sunday some good thunderstorms expected out of Kingaroy, extending up towards the northern extremities of the Sunshine Coast, up towards Guyanda and Proston. Some good thunderstorms as well extending further inland from the coastline, Billawheeler, Dingo, Emerald, Claremont, all expecting some good thunderstorms on Sunday night to round out the weekend. Thunderstorms as well extending further up into the North Queensland area as well, but we'll touch on those later on in the forecast update. You can see that they upscale pretty dramatically later on at the 9 to a big squall line that's going to race towards the coastline, and as such, some heavy falls are expected here adjacent to the coastline. Moranbah, Glendon as well, expecting some good falls, but those communities adjacent to the coastline, such as Ogmore, Rockhampton, Gladstone, and Agnes Water, and even down towards Bundaberg, unfortunately, it doesn't look like they're going to get anything significant in the way of rainfall. But mark my words, there will be some big accumulations inland from these thunderstorms, especially at around sort of 7 or 8 p.m, and then a bit later on into that, when those score lines really do begin to upscale into that kind of big line of moderate to heavy rainfall. Then we'll be talking about accumulations up towards 60 or 70 millimeters from these thunderstorms. So certainly some really heavy stuff is expected on Sunday afternoon. Of course, it is from thunderstorms, so take this forecast with a very heavy pinch of salt. Things can change dramatically, and those thunderstorms can be very unpredictable in terms of what rainfall is expected. Now, through a surface trough that's going to develop on Monday, the thunderstorms are still going to be there, and especially those severe ones, but they're going to be in a completely different fashion by the looks of things. They're going to fire up in a pretty slow-moving kind of fashion across the southeast of Queensland. You're going to be a bunch of pulse thunderstorms that could upscale pretty quickly into supercellular storms, especially around the Chinchilla area. You can see plenty of instability in the atmosphere around this area here down towards St. George and Thallon. There's some good thunderstorms expected to fire up nonetheless around Emerald and Dingo. They will upscale pretty quickly later on, that likely to become severe very quickly with heavy rainfall, damaging winds, and the potential for medium to large size hailstones. I wouldn't expect anything really crazy or super crazy on Monday night, but certainly some gnarly stuff is expected, and some heavy falls also expected from these thunderstorms, upscaling to some pretty big rain messes along the Sunshine Coast and for communities further just inland of that. The further inland you get, the more sparse these thunderstorms will become, and out towards Tambo, Jericho, and Charleville, and locations further west of those, you're not likely to see anything in the way of thunderstorms on Monday night. But in this general area here in Queensland's thunderstorm alley between Tambo, Rolleston, and Injune, we'll likely see some really good thunderstorms there firing up. Most likely to be pulse thunderstorms, upscaling into supercell thunderstorms, but they shouldn't be too widespread in the sense that every location is going to get something, so it will still be a little bit of an exciting aspect on the forecast. We will revisit this later on this weekend coming. The rainfall will really pipe up later on Monday night into early Tuesday morning. Thunderstorms really expected to dominate the scene, along with showers on Monday night into Tuesday morning to round out 2024. You can see this low pressure system expected to develop very broadly offshore, and this becomes very important for the longer range forecast. But it looks like we're going to get a steady stream of showers funneled ashore, at least for the Brisbane metro area and the Gold Coast. Not so much thunderstorms, but further inland you'll see some convective blow-ups, especially around the Thallon, Moree, and Lightning Ridge area. We'll see some good blow-ups on Tuesday night to round out 2024, and we could be seeing a couple of severe thunderstorms out there, most likely 4 damaging winds and the isolated risk of heavy rainfall. They're not expected to be crazy severe, but they will still definitely pack a punch out there, and some accumulations towards 30 or 40 millimetres expected, and also for showers expected along the Queensland coastline into the southeastern pocket on Tuesday. Between 20 and 40 millimetres can be expected for the Gold Coast, Brisbane, and some locations along the Sunshine Coast. Good thunderstorms also expected to blow up further inland into south central Queensland by the looks of things, north of the Wide Bay area. And then to welcome in 2025, the rainfall continues. Thunderstorms expected further inland. They shouldn't be too severe on Wednesday morning. On the first day of 2025, they should definitely not be too severe, but we'll still see that heavy rainfall streaming in ashore here from a bit of an onshore flow that's expected to develop. We're definitely going to get that rainfall driven ashore along the central and along the northern parts of the Sunshine Coast, and then into the central Queensland coast. We'll likely see some good rainfall accumulations there. Again, up to about 40 or 50 millimetres expected on the 1st of January. Some good thunderstorms expected later on into the afternoon and evening as well. We will revisit this in a future forecast update. It certainly looks like some steady and good rainfall accumulations are possible at this time. Then plenty of big thunderstorms expected to dot the locations on Wednesday night, which could definitely give way to some pretty significant thunderstorms. You can see it here on the GFS forecast model. Some really significant thunderstorms are expected on Wednesday night. It is still a little bit of a wild card, both Tuesday and Wednesday's forecast. It's still a very difficult one, just considering the uncertainty between the forecast models. So we will revisit this in a future forecast update, but both the East and West, the GFS and the Axis G3, suggesting rainfall and the risk of some gnarly severe thunderstorms. Let's touch on rainfall accumulations. I'm very aware that I'm really beginning to flap on about the southeast of Queensland, but over the next 6 days you can see peak rainfall accumulations, especially from those storms that will fire up on Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, up to about 140, 150 millimetres around the northern extremities of the Sunshine Coast. Hervey Bay about 100 millimetres, Bundaberg as well about 50 to 60 millimetres. It really depends on what thunderstorms move through what locations, but this is a good kind of baseline as to what rainfall is expected, kind of a good minimum as to what rainfall is expected in the next 6 days. We'll go from south and we'll head further north. You can see Gold Coast expecting at least 20 millimetres. I'd say probably closer to about 50 millimetres of the Gold Coast. They're not expecting anything crazy in the way of thunderstorms, but it only takes a couple of showers that will come through on Tuesday or Wednesday to really tip the scales to up to that 50 millimetre mark. Brisbane, it's still heavily dependent on what thunderstorms come through here, just considering their protected nature from those showers that could stream through from the coastline. About 27 millimetres expected on this forecast. I'd say up to about 50 millimetres over the next 6 days is expected. And then other locations on the Sunshine Coast, somewhere between 100 and 50 to 100 millimetres. Some better falls expected the further north as you go from thunderstorms that are just going to converge in this area here that will turn to rainfall on Tuesday and Wednesday nights. Further inland, you can see at least 30 to 50 millimetres across a lot of locations further inland into central Queensland and into the southern extremities of far north Queensland. In fact, some really good falls also possible up there. The rainfall there shouldn't be too extreme. I'm not expecting triple figure totals over the next 6 days. The majority of this rainfall is actually going to come through over the next 3 or 4 days before it eases off on Monday and then pipes up again later on next week. But the rainfall accumulations there are still expected to be healthy across a lot of locations. In Queensland's Thunderstorm Alley as well, adjacent to Rolleston, we'll likely see some really good rainfall accumulations from the good storms that will fire up on Sunday and Monday nights respectively. Anyways, that basically does it for the southeast of Queensland. If you've got any further questions or comments, then please do let me know in the comment section down below. I'd be more than happy to help you out with a detailed forecast for your location. Let's head up into the central coast of Queensland because we do have some good falls expected for these locations. Starting from Wednesday, you can see rainfall and thunderstorms expected to be constantly blowing up throughout Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. And it looks like we're going to get a nice stream of showers developing from a very broad Coral Sea low pressure system that's going to be driving and funneling this rainfall ashore. Thunderstorms expected between Wednesday and Thursday. There will be few and far between, but then that rainfall pipes up for locations between Bundaberg and Rockhampton on Friday. And this is, again, still a pretty loose forecast by the looks of things, but these showers here could provide some much needed rainfall accumulations to the central coast of Queensland. Reciprocated between the other forecast models, not really. The Axis G3 is calling for something of similar nature, but it's also calling for much more kind of a far north Queensland bias here, and this forecast doesn't make an awful lot of sense just based off how many low and high pressure systems are kind of going to be swirling around each other, and the GFS forecast as well, even for this time of the year, that is a very kind of low rainfall forecast that the GFS is suggesting, but we will still likely see it beginning Friday and then continuing through Saturday and Sunday, and these showers heading progressively further north as the week rolls on and into the weekend. We'll see a line of showers moving into the central Queensland and into the far north Queensland coastlines, bringing in some much needed rainfall accumulations. And it'd be a big stretch to call this a rainfall depression or even a really heavy rainfall event. There will still be heavy rainfall at times, and the accumulations could really begin to mount up, and you can see between Saturday, Sunday and Monday with the rainfall it's going to be streaming into the Mackay area here, at least on this forecast solution. And again, between the other forecast models as well, there's not too much difference, especially with the GFS, and later on into the forecast period we're going to likely see some pretty heavy rainfall accumulations begin to pile on here. This is still, again, a preliminary forecast, and I would take this with a very heavy pinch of salt. In fact, I'd probably take this with a whole salt shaker at this time, just considering how much the forecast has been flip-flopping over the last couple of days. But this is what it's suggesting today. We're suggesting some heavier showers that are expected to extend or begin on Friday around sort of the Agnes Water and Gladstone area, and then extend further north through Saturday and Sunday up to about Mackay, really reaching their worst on Sunday afternoon with some heavy falls expected around Mackay, and then heading further north between Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, and then inundating the far northern coast of Queensland with some heavier falls up there. Either way, this rainfall could cause some problems. I mean, if you take a look at rainfall accumulations out to the 10th of January, just between the 1st and the 10th of January 2025, you can see these 10-day rainfall accumulations really aren't anything to shrug off. We will be talking at least 100 millimetres of rainfall depending on where these showers pipe up around Agnes Water and Gladstone, about 80 to 100 millimetres expected there. Rockhampton as well, it'll be a little bit dry for Rockhampton, just considering that they're a little bit further inland and these showers are going to be pretty much exclusively coastal. But Yeppoon could see about 100 millimetres, Rockhampton itself probably closer to about 60 millimetres, and then the real rainfall piles on for locations between Ogmore up to Proserpine. And we saw how wet Proserpine was with the last rainfall depression. I do really believe that the forecast here might be a little bit light on for the rainfall, only suggesting about 50 millimetres when Mackay is looking at about 150 millimetres, and some locations adjacent to the coastline outside of Serena and West Hill looking at up to about 200 to 250 millimetres. Depending on what showers come through here, we could be seeing accumulations at 100 millimetres or 10-day accumulations up to about 300 or 400 millimetres. So it really is a big wild card on what showers come through here, and I think that the forecast and all forecasters are just trying to get through this next thunderstorm outbreak across the southeast of Queensland before they make a proper forecast for the central coast of Queensland. It's still very difficult to say exactly what is expected over the next 10 days there, or in fact over the next 14 days. The forecast still has a lot of uncertainties and a lot of cruises that need to be ironed out. And just briefly for far north Queensland, you can see that they're expecting some good falls as well. In fact, thunderstorms are going to be pretty prevalent over the coming couple of days there. You can see this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, especially Sunday, some good thunderstorms expected inland from Ravenshaw and Atherton and Mareeba out towards Georgetown and Croydon, then extending up the west side of the Cape York Peninsula. Thunderstorms expected to continue through Monday as well, but there'll be fewer and further between, and then Tuesday some more storms expected there. Stock standard stuff for this time of the year, but you can see those showers piping up by the 5th and the 6th of January. Those showers there could be pretty heavy at times by the looks of things, especially for the Cassowary Coast and then extending up into the Daintree rainforest as well. Some really good showers do look possible on this forecast here, and the rainfall doesn't stop until about the 9th of January. So with about 5 days of steady rainfall, it's going to be coming through at maybe 30 to 50 millimetres a day. You're talking about accumulations between 150 and 250 millimetres, which is a totally plausible number. Again, it is going to be a forecast that I want to revisit at a later time, just considering again the discrepancies between forecast models and how much the forecast has been flip-flopping and changing over the last couple of days. It is a very challenging forecast to make. In fact, this is the most challenging forecast that I've had to make with being on YouTube for over a year. This is a very, very difficult one indeed, because there are so many different factors at play here. In terms of the tropical forecast, though, for the Coral Sea, nothing in the way of tropical lows or tropical cyclones expected. There is a weak spin up here on this forecast on the 10th of January, but that doesn't look like anything significant, and that just looks like it is going to be a weak rainfall depression or something like that. We will look at the tropical cyclone forecast every day from about here on out. We're definitely expecting something at least to fire up before 2026. I mean, you'd be expecting that. With the way things are going, it doesn't really look like that's a likelihood at this time, but certainly some cyclone activity should be on the cards pretty soon. It's not going to be that far away, and there's not going to be that much more waiting until tropical cyclones begin piling on for the far north of Queensland, or into the Coral Sea at least. Over in the north and over in the northwest, there is some good falls on the cards. You can see over the next 10 days, or in fact over the next 14 days, accumulations up to about 250 millimetres for the northwest corner of Western Australia. Some good falls there, mainly from thunderstorms, and that is typical for this time of the year. They're getting that typical wet season barrage of rainfall now, and the rainfall accumulations really now piling on. Multiple locations between Broome and Columbaroo, exclusive of those locations. They're really isolated to these areas here on the far north of Western Australia. Multiple locations have now picked up over 600 millimetres in the past 2 months, and I imagine they'll get to 1,000 millimetres by the end of January, just with how things are going. You can see that rainfall does pile on again later on into the forecast period. Those heavy falls are expected to begin sometime in January, with a bit of a conjunction with some enhanced tropical activity that's expected up there. Same deal with the Northern Territory. It's a very similar forecast to Western Australia, just with slightly less rainfall. Showers and storms expected over the north for the next 14 days. Nothing out of the ordinary there. And while we are keeping things tropical, we'll head over to the Cocos Keeling Islands, pull the forecast right back to today, and flip it over to the satellite imagery, because we do have dual tropical lows up here at this time. You can see it here just as the sun begins to rise on this system. We've got this weak tropical low trying to spin itself up into a tropical cyclone, but it's doing a really awful job now, and it is battling a very high level of wind shear. It doesn't look that bad on the satellite imagery, actually. It does look like a properly developing tropical low at this time, but if I was to show you the satellite loop of this system here, it really isn't looking very healthy at all. It's sheared to tears, and there is another low pressure system really eking out its kind of life down on the southeastern side rather of this system, and as such, this system is having a really hard time developing, and it's going to continue to have a really hard time developing over the coming couple of days. And as such, we're not really expecting anything in the way of tropical cyclone stuff here. It will have an attempt, and in fact it is actually expected to make a direct landfall on West Island. I mean, that is like finding a needle in a haystack, making a landfall on West Island, but it looks like it's going to make kind of a landfall, or at least a very close pass of the Cocos Keeling Islands, with peak winds in excess of 40 to 45 knots there, and wind gusts up to about 50 knots by the looks of things. In fact, it could be a little bit stronger than that, closer to about 60 knots. So this system, by at least this forecast here, certainly is packing a punch, and it'll be interesting to see what the weather forecast, or the weather station on the Cocos Keeling Islands has to say about the system. Right now, they're kind of in a big low spot, but those winds are about to really pile on there, and I'll be watching that like a hawk as this day goes on. And if we see this system develop into a tropical cyclone, there will be an evening update on this system. In terms of the forecast, though, nothing crazy expected. It'll Fujiwara up and eat out the other system, hopefully throughout the course of today, but maybe into the course of tomorrow. We'll likely see that system merge into tropical low 07U, and then this system will go along its merry way and head into the southwest Indian Ocean by about Monday or Tuesday. Most likely not as a tropical cyclone. Another low pressure system expected to kind of develop offshore from Western Australia here, and that will drive up the temperatures of the southwest corner of Western Australia, which we're not going to talk about in this forecast update, but we will in a later forecast update. But this low pressure system here will have an impact on the WA weather forecast as well, and then heading further out to sea by Thursday or Friday, the 2nd and 3rd of January respectively. Interesting stuff on the forecast, but nothing in the way of impacts to the West Australian coastline, and only some minor impacts expected for the Cocos-Keeling Islands. Again, 60 knots for them in terms of a tropical cyclone impact. That isn't common, it's not every day, so we will certainly be giving that airtime as it is necessary. Let's just head over into Victoria and just talk about the weather down there, because they have had some significant fire problems throughout the course of yesterday. Really big fire day yesterday. Had the fire really grow quite dramatically, and that emergency warning still in effect for a lot of locations across Victoria. Certainly was a very, very scary time indeed for a lot of Victorians. Temperatures are going to be a little bit cooler throughout throughout today. In fact, they're going to be substantially cooler throughout the course of today. We're not expecting anything crazy in terms of maximum temperatures. In fact, the warmest parts are only going to be into the mid-20s. Melbourne actually expecting a top into the low 20s, if it even gets into the 20s by the looks of things. That doesn't look like exactly a hot shot at this time. Good conditions for the cricket, though. It looks like a couple of showers will stream in later on tonight, so hopefully we get a full day's play. We definitely do need it. Australia's got off to a ripper start, so hopefully they can make some quick runs this morning and then declare and send the Indians into bat, and hopefully they get a full day's play, because we do desperately need it, like I said. But it looks like, unfortunately, for both Saturday and Sunday, there's going to be rain delays throughout Saturday and then into early Sunday morning. Sydney to Hobart yacht race, I haven't actually checked where the yachts are at this time. I imagine they're well and truly on their way to Tasmania at this time. It has been a very quick race. I imagine it is going to be a very quick race, just with the winds that they are seeing. They're starting to come out more of the west at this time, still northwesterlies for the stragglers, but I imagine that has been a very, very bumpy night indeed, and they cannot wait to get themselves into port to finish off the race, because the winds down here, I mean, you can see in the core of this low pressure system gusting up to about 70 knots. Very strong stuff indeed, and that's the stuff that they were battling with last night. Anyways, this video has gone for well and truly long enough. Thank you so much for watching the video to this point. I really do appreciate the support, and I really do appreciate all the lovely comments that I've been receiving as well, and the Christmas wishes. Thank you so much to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now. Again, I could not run this show without them, and their support is much appreciated. If you haven't already, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already as well. We're getting closer and closer to 23,000 followers. We might actually reach that by the end of this year, so again, that support would be much appreciated. But that is all from me today, and I will catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.